Hello, friends. Welcome to .org, the podcast all about how nonprofits tell their stories. I am your host, Matt Pearl. I was a broadcast journalist, a TV news reporter, locally and nationally for 20 years. Now I run Pearl Impact Media. I help nonprofits and purpose-driven businesses raise money, raise awareness, and distinguish themselves from the rest through meaningful, memorable, and affordable video storytelling. That is my mission, and an offshoot of that mission is this podcast. Each episode, I chat with a nonprofit leader with a defined, thoughtful, and successful approach to telling their organization's story. About a month ago, I gave a presentation in Augusta, Georgia. I live in the Atlanta area, but I drove 2 hours east because I connected with someone who is the director of programs at the Community Foundation for the Central Savannah River Area. And I think community foundations are so incredibly important. The resources they provide, the training they provide, the community that they provide for nonprofits. Surely, if you are with a nonprofit, there is a community foundation in your city or in your region or maybe your state. You should find them because they have so many resources to offer. I had a great experience presenting about video strategy and video storytelling, and it was actually so enlightening for me, and I felt like the kernels that were shared from me to the attendees and the questions that were asked from the attendees back to me really made me think this could be its own podcast. Let me bring on the person who made this all happen, and so she is here today. My guest for this episode of .org, Lasima Turmon, the Director of Programs for the Community Foundation of the Central Savannah River Area. Lasima, welcome to .org.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt. I really appreciate it. It's very excited to be here.
And it was so exciting for me to come out and speak with the various members who attended our workshop. It was a great crowd, and we went for about 90 minutes. And I think we probably could have gone for another 30 if if it wasn't a lunch session. I'm curious, before I jump in with my questions, and to frame it for those of you listening, this will really be primarily about visual storytelling and video storytelling to some degree, but really the kinds of questions that are on the minds of a lot of nonprofits. My hope, if you're listening to this and you're not having these conversations regularly with people in the nonprofit space, is that these questions might spur some thoughts in your own mind, might catalyze some conversations that you might have with people in the space. And I'm just curious, as we get going, Lasima, in that 90-minute session, what were the things that stood out to you? What were the main takeaways about the current landscape and about visual storytelling?
So one of the biggest things that I think I noticed from back of the room was how many people really realized that they could do this more and better. I think there was a lot of apprehension around video and video content and people just being stuck in either thinking that they didn't have the tools or equipment or the know-how to produce quality video content, or that they weren't the right people to do it. And so I think that a really big thing was that a lot of them left feeling empowered to be able to go back within their organizations and just do it. That was really exciting. I had a coaching session with one of the attendees shortly after, and she was just excited. There were lots of ideas generated, and again, just people being curious, but also feeling empowered to actually just go and create. I think that barrier was busted through during the session, and so I'm hoping to see more of what they learned in action.
That's so great to hear, first of all. And secondly, and you and I have not talked about this really since the workshop. It was 3 weeks ago. So this is, what you're saying is new to me as well. I'm curious because when we think about video specifically, right, we all have iPhones. We all know how to shoot a video on our iPhone. And we all have that very basic fundamental knowledge that even 15, 20 years ago, that wasn't available because we didn't have video cameras at the ready. You had to have a camcorder or, some kind of digital camera that could do it. And those weren't as common then as they are now. I'm curious for you then, from your vantage point, what do you think brings that barrier for folks in the nonprofit space. Why do they feel, okay, I can do this in my personal life, but I don't feel either confident enough or comfortable enough to do this professionally with my organization?
I think that's a couple of things. One, our nonprofit partners and their staff and their volunteers and their boards are people that are fueled with a lot of passion around the issue that they're addressing in their community and the people that they're serving in their community. And they see themselves as subject matter experts on those things, which makes them not a subject matter expert at marketing. And so their desire to operate at their fullest and highest capacity and the level of excellence that they expect out of their regular work, I just think that there's just the idea that this is not my work to do. I'm not the person to do it. That's someone else's responsibility, calling, gift. And so I think that people kind of put themselves in a little bit of a box of like, I'm just here to do my work and assume passively that people will take notice of the work that's happening. On the flip side of that, I also think that so many times, especially here in our nonprofit community, we have some very large, highly sophisticated, high functioning organizations. We also have maybe even more grassroots, one or two people at the helm, and it's just like one more thing that they have to get done. And sometimes when there's one more thing to get done, it falls on the list of priority of the things to do in the time that you have during the day. And so I think that it just falls so much by the wayside sometimes that it's hard to catch up. And then it becomes intimidating to try to even start because you feel like you're so far behind. But again, I think that they felt renewed and energized and empowered to just start somewhere and then get a momentum and get it going. So, yeah, just super excited about that spark. It was truly a spark.
And that was one of the things that I really tried to drive home, which I think a lot of people, it is kind of a light bulb moment, because I think when most people think about developing a presence on social media, they really think they have to be everywhere all at once, and they have to flood the market with posts, and they have to post every day on every platform. And especially when you're getting started with marketing, social media, video, whatever it is, I think it's so important to take that pressure and remove it and make it about a learning experience. Really, at the beginning, it's trial and error. I think in a lot of cases, obviously, you can't just post anything on your social media accounts. You're representing yourself professionally. But I think there's just so much room in the social landscape, particularly, to just try something. See if it works. If only one person likes your post, then okay, that probably didn't work. But even in that case, the algorithms are such that if one person likes your post, very few people are even going to see it. So it does kind of give you not anonymity, but it does give you that freedom to try within limits, within range, but to try, see how it goes, figure out what works, and then you can build a consistency from there.
Yeah, that word consistency was one of the takeaways that I had from it, that as I'm working with nonprofit partners, I'll remind them and talk to them that the biggest task is not even what you're capturing and what you're sharing and posting, is being consistent about doing so. Trying to help people understand even from a funder's perspective, that if you start sharing and then there's a lag, there's an assumption that you're not doing anything. And so being consistent in putting your story out there in the different ways that you can tell your story for different people who will receive it, I think is probably the next biggest step to actually taking action. Is once you start, be consistent about it. Do it on purpose. Be intentional.
I think I want to go back to something that you said when you kind of expanded this from, hesitation and concern about getting into video and visual storytelling to a broader hesitation about getting into marketing. And that goes to the social media conundrum, right? Well, if I get into marketing, that means I have to post every day on Instagram, and I don't have the people to do that, right? And I'm curious for you, I think when it comes to nonprofits, marketing is an investment one way or another. You're either investing money in bringing in outside help, or you're investing time that your staff and you need to take to put yourself out there, right? And a lot of times nonprofits don't dive headfirst into that because seemingly it doesn't directly impact their operations or their programs, and it doesn't directly impact the bottom line of their fundraising. What do you do when it comes to pointing folks to success stories? And here is the ROI on everything we're talking about: marketing, video, visual storytelling, whatever that may be. Where do you show that the results are not just possible, but likely?
Well, in a couple of different ways. One is that I usually tell nonprofits that your goal is actually to convince people who have no need for your service that you are important to the community. They don't have any kind of a connection to your work. They have no need for whatever it is that you provide. But that is the key to sustainability, is the people who don't need you appreciate your presence and support it on behalf of the people who do. Because if the people who you serve will know what you do, you don't really have to market to them much. The people who serve alongside you have already committed. They know what you do, but that is not enough for longevity. And so it's beyond those people. And the only way for anybody besides those who are already working with you or benefiting from your services to know what you do is for you to tell them that you did it. You have to talk about your work, and you have to talk about it consistently over time and in different ways. And one of the fun things, we do an annual grant program called Community Grants every year, and organizations are able to apply for a $15,000 grant. And we always talk about collaboration a lot. And some organizations in the past couple of years, there have been two sets of organizations that have openly talked about their relationship with each other in their grant applications. They're all applying for the same grant, but these organizations have decided that we're going to make sure that we amplify the impact of what we're doing by telling how it's helping another organization, how they're working with us. And every year that I've seen that happen, both organizations get funded. They're not doing the same work, but they're doing work that complements each other and have decided we're going to work together to do it. And then they tell people, hey, not only are we doing this, but we're doing it in partnership with this other organization, and this is what they're doing in their work. And now they're telling two stories that is inspiring people to choose to give to them. And I think that we don't consider the impact of just opening our mouths and talking about what we do, or why we do it, or who we do it for, or where we do it at, or how we get it done. There's so many messages in the work that will appeal to different people. And if you're only saying the same thing, if you're only repeating your mission over and over again, if you sound like you're, just on repeat, you're missing people who need to hear your message. And so if you think about, I tell people all the time, I want to know what you do, where you do it at, who you do it for, why you do it, how you get it done, what you need to do it better. Tell me all those things. You don't have to tell me all those things at one time, but that's 5 or 7 different messages right there in itself, just answering those questions of who, what, when, where, why, how. And if you just start there and just say, here's who we are, here's what we do, here's why we do it, here's who we, like, there are so many messages and then so many things that can come out of that. That creates trust in people who are going to support your work, because you are openly and willingly and voluntarily sharing, versus somebody having to ask and beg and pull it out of you to get to a level of trust. You're more likely to instill trust when you are messaging without being asked, which leads to more support.
Mm. I'll tell you what, if you're listening to this podcast, I invite you to press that 15-second rewind button like 8 times, go back about 2 minutes, and listen to that answer again, because that is one of the most real answers, and I think one of the most helpful, informative responses I've heard about the value of marketing and the value of reaching different audiences with different messages. That is so critical. And I think it's really true. I see that in my own work. There are posts that I do on LinkedIn that get responses from folks in the nonprofit community. There's some that I do that seem to get more responses from my old colleagues in journalism. There are some that I do that, mostly get colleagues from my family and my friends, right? But by doing all those posts, I'm reaching all these different people and nonprofits who have, a charge to raise money and raise awareness of what they do. My gosh, there are not enough ways to at least experiment with trying to do that. So love that answer. She is Lasima Turmon. I am Matt Pearl. This is .org, the podcast about how nonprofits tell their stories. Let me take a quick minute in between here to tell you about how I tell stories. I was a journalist for many years. I traveled the world, covered the Olympics 3 times, won national awards for video journalism, mostly for stories about the underreported issues facing our communities and the people and organizations offering solutions. Now I get to work directly with those people and organizations. At Pearl Impact Media, I provide meaningful, memorable video storytelling for nonprofits and purpose-driven businesses. Maybe you want to raise funds, maybe you want to raise awareness, maybe you want to showcase your services in ways only video can do. I'm based in Atlanta but work with clients across the country, and I would love to work with you. Head to my website at pearlimpactmedia.com to schedule a free consultation. Back with Lasima Turmon, one of the things that you mentioned that was also very salient in that last answer was about the value of collaboration. And I know what I took away from being in the room with the various attendees, and there were several, it was in the dozens for sure, in this one space in Augusta, Georgia, folks taking time out of their lunch hour. I know what I saw in terms of how just the simple fact of everyone being together discussing this topic seemed to make a difference and seemed to energize some folks. I'm curious, from where you were sitting, what did you sense about that?
Well, one is that the realization that they are not alone. There are other people who are curious or confused, or have some kind of hesitance to doing this work. And I think that in itself boosted the confidence levels of the organizations, because a lot of times when you're not doing something or you feel like you aren't equipped to do it, you think you're the only one who can't do it or can't do it well, and you don't want to essentially embarrass yourself or your organization around other people, especially your peers. But being able to hear other people say, oh yeah, I had that issue, or yeah, that was a good question, kind of solidified the fact that they're not doing any of this work alone or in a silo, but also they were quick to help each other. Like, there was a group of people that were there to learn. They were there to get information and to try to position themselves to be able to do this kind of work. And what they realized is that they know more than they think they do, because when a peer had a barrier or a question or an issue, some of them had the answer, or a way that they wanted to offer up help. And I think that again boosted their confidence in their own ability to go and start doing. And that was really, I love it when I tutor kids sometimes, and I go, if you can tell me what you did wrong, or if you can tell me what you're doing, like, even if you did it wrong, but you know. And so hearing the people in the room come to each other's rescue, so to speak, let them know that they know more than they think. They came there thinking that I have no idea what I'm doing, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, this is what I do. And then a partner presented an issue or a barrier or concern that they had a solution or the path to a solution on, that kind of helped them to say, okay, if I can help them, I can help myself, I can help my organization, I can actually do this, I might be able to do some of this. And it was just really exciting.
Yeah, it's funny. I know from my perspective, I don't really do very many one-on-one consultations with nonprofits. That's not really my business. But I love workshops. I loved them when I was a reporter. Anytime I would get asked to speak at a storytelling workshop, I would always do it. Never got paid. I just loved being able to commune and to see the light go on for other people. And I've carried that over to this work I do now. And that's one of the things that I love about workshops, right? Yes, I believe there's plenty of value in what I'm contributing as the speaker. But when you see attendees start to help each other
Yes.
and they figure it out together, then you're really seeing those benefits multiply in ways that last long beyond after I leave.
But I also see that the presence of the subject matter expert gives them the confidence to speak up because they know that once they get to the end of their rope, or this is as far as I can carry this support that I'm giving, that there's somebody in the room that can take us even further. And then also that when I go back to my organization and I'm attempting to do this work, I now have a face and a name of somebody who knows more about it than me and who knows me, that I can call and say, I'm stuck, or I need help with this, or can you remind me how to do that? And so I think that the power of relationships, and the development of those relationships and the network aided that confidence and that ability for them to speak up for each other.
Yeah. And I think probably where that showed up most, and where I kind of want to segue here for the last third or so of this podcast, is the idea of ethical storytelling, and knowing that when you embark on this marketing journey and this visual storytelling and video storytelling in particular, that you're doing it ethically, that you're doing it authentically, that you're not exploiting the people you serve. These are questions that come up a lot when I talk with potential clients and when I hear from nonprofits. It's something that it's been really fascinating for me, coming from the journalism world, where that's kind of ingrained in you. You know, your job is to, you know, do no harm, right? In what you're doing. If someone's going to share their story with you, if someone's going to trust you to tell their story, not only do you owe it to them to do it right, but you owe it to them to treat them with dignity and empathy, and you know, try to foresee complications, right? You can't control everything. And certainly once something is out there, whether it's on social media or in an email or anywhere, you know, that's where it kind of leaves your control. But there is that responsibility you should feel to make sure you're doing right by the people that are taking the time and opening themselves up. I think that's even more critical in the nonprofit space, where you are working every day to serve people who you might then ask to be your advocates. And that can lead to some murky spaces. Again, I'll kind of give you the open floor. We all sat for 30 minutes and talked about this during the workshop. I'm curious what you took away, and not just in terms of the guidance that folks received, but the questions that they had.
Well, so I think that this is probably one of the biggest barriers to doing this kind of storytelling that nonprofit partners have, only because they seem to approach it with all the reasons why they can't or they don't want to. And it's not a bad thing. It's showing that they care and that they recognize that there's an importance to giving people their dignity and their space, but also protecting the trust that's been given to them by the people that they're serving. It's also one of the ways that we shoot ourselves in the foot on the opportunity to talk about our impact, because if I can't talk about the people and the communities that I'm serving, I can't tell anybody that it's important that I'm here doing the work. So there is a balance that has to be achieved. And I think that because a lot of the people in this space are not marketers, they are the frontline service providers, or whatever champion for the issue. And they are literally in a protective space for the people and the communities that they're serving. But I think that if someone can come along and challenge that hesitance, but also offer up innovative, not necessarily even innovative, just different ways of thinking about it, that the people who are doing the work every day, just that's not where their mind is. So a lot of times we have a lot of homeless service providers. We have a lot of programs that support children and vulnerable populations and healthcare. And so, people immediately go, well, I've got HIPAA and I've got, kids to protect. And I'm like, yes, but, have you ever taken a picture of a baby's feet or the back of a baby's diapered butt? Like, who can't resist that, right? You have not exploited this child, but you are showing people visually, this is who is benefiting from our work, and that's important. So I think that having a champion for your story, just assign somebody with the duty. They don't have to create the content, but assign somebody with the responsibility of thinking of when and how something can be a story. And then talk about it as a team or in a group of peers, and not in your own mind, because you're going to tell yourself, I can't use that, or that's not appropriate. And there may be a way to make it so. But then also being very direct. Development team members for nonprofits have to be direct. They have to ask, right? They have to ask. If they don't ask, nonprofits aren't resourced. There needs to be somebody that has to ask. If you are in front of somebody that is benefiting from your existence, ask them, would you like to share? And if they are willing to share, then you are not exploiting them. You are not doing the sharing on their behalf. You are not telling your story for them. You are asking them, will you share how this has benefited you? Or volunteer, will you share why you give your time? Or donor, will you share what made you give here? And that helps somebody else to understand where they might fit in with you, but also helps people to know that your work is important, and it's not just important to you because you're passionate about it. And that is the thing that has to happen for people to support you ongoing, is that what you do matters, but it has to matter to more than just you, the passion carrier. And you have to have different perspectives that will then be able to see the picture differently or the moment differently, to be able to say, how is this story relevant to our work, and who would want to hear it? Who needs to know this? Because every story is for somebody. An impact story is not just for donors. If you don't have anybody to serve, then you don't need to exist. So some of your stories are for the people who need you, who don't know you yet. And so just there needs to be somebody whose job it is to think, is this a story? Could it be a story? Who would benefit from knowing about this moment? And if it's absolutely nobody, then it's not a story to tell. But if there's somebody that would benefit from that story being heard, then it's like the next question is, what's the best way to tell the story?
Mm-hmm. I think certainly when it comes to telling your story in an ethical way, there is so much nuance and so much is situational. Depends on the specific circumstances that you're facing. But I think one area where, or one piece of advice where you really can't go wrong, is to just be transparent. Let folks know, here's what we'd like. Here's where it's going to be seen and where it's going to be shared. And here's what we're hoping will happen. Again, you can't control what might happen when something enters the social media atmosphere, right? But you can at least express your intentions and express your commitment to, on your end, doing as much as you can to treat whoever you're asking with that respect and with that dignity, especially if there's somebody that you serve. So very, very valuable. And again, that is just a smidgen of the conversation that we had with your various attendees in Augusta. But it was just such a great experience. I'm glad we were able to talk about it a little bit here on this podcast. And I hope for those of you listening at home, I really hope this has been beneficial for you as well. Lasima Turmon, before I let you go, just last question, that famous reporter's question. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to add?
Not particularly, with the exception that the last comment you made made me think about something I said at the beginning, is that it all boils down to trust. And so that transparency on both ends, builds trust. So when you're being transparent with people so that they know you're being ethical in your storytelling, they trust you and they will open up and allow you to tell their stories. And by telling your story and the story of your impact and the story of your organizations, you also build trust outside of your circle of service that allows you an opportunity to sustain your work, to be able to be there for the people who trust you to be there when you need them. So ultimately, I think storytelling just comes down to building and maintaining trust that can make or break our work. And our work is critical right now. And so, we need to keep that trust on all sides.
That's Lasima Turmon, Director of Programs for the Community Foundation of the Central Savannah River Area. Lasima, thank you so much for your time. Where can we find your organization online?
Oh, well, you can find our website is www.cfcsra.org. The Community Foundation for the CSRA is also on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Just type in our name and you'll find us. We'd love for you to follow, like us, keep up with what we have going on here in our community, and figure out ways that we can all work together to advance the work of our local nonprofits. Thank you so much for having me, Matt.
My pleasure. Thank you for your time. And that is episode 8 of .org. If you found this helpful and want others to hear it too, a great rating or review wherever you get your podcasts goes a long way. Please take the time if you can. And check out my work at Pearl Impact Media. Video storytelling can be so beneficial for so many organizations. I would love to work with yours. Book a free consultation at pearlimpactmedia.com. All right, friends, I am Matt Pearl. Thank you for listening to .org. We'll see you next time.